Give me that letter, Julian.
No. What are you hiding?
It's nothing. Give it to me now.
Your fear betrays you, Marceline.
This recording ends the lies.
They covered it up. The family knew.
It's time to end this.
Julian, don't.
The truth is in here.
You can't.
3 minutes before the wedding, Julian Vale walked into the bride's room and ended the marriage before it began. He did not knock. The door opened behind Iris Bellamy with a sound too soft for what it carried. Outside, beyond the carved walls of Vale House's private chapel, 200 guests were already standing. The string quartet had begun Alara's old piano arrangement, rewritten for violins, because no one in the Vale family liked hearing grief in its original form. Cameras waited behind velvet ropes. Reporters whispered into hidden microphones. White camellias filled every archway, too perfect, too clean, their scent pressing against the air, like a secret trying to cover rot. Iris sat before the mirror in her wedding dress, one shoulder still unfastened, one pearl button hanging loose at the back of her neck. Julian stood behind her in a black suit, holding a white envelope. For one foolish second, she thought it might be his vows. Then she saw his face. There are expressions that break slowly. His had already broken somewhere else, and arrived wearing discipline. His jaw was still. His eyes were dry. That was the first thing that frightened her. Not anger, not shouting, not even the envelope. The dryness. "I was told to give you a chance to explain," he said. Iris turned from the mirror. "And will you?" Julian placed the envelope on the dressing table between her lipstick and the small silver comb Clara had lent her for luck. He opened it with 2 fingers and slid out 4 photographs. Iris did not touch them. She did not need to. In the first photograph, she was leaving the Marrow Hotel beneath hard rain. In the second, Adrian Crowe stood beside her, his collar turned up, his face half hidden. In the third, his hand was at her back. In the fourth, she appeared to be looking over her shoulder like a woman afraid of being caught. Julian's voice did not rise. "You met him 2 nights ago." "Yes, the man who destroyed my sister." Iris looked down at the photographs, then at the stopped clock above the mirror. Its hands rested at 3:17. The same hour Alara Vale had sent her final message. Julian noticed her looking. Something in him hardened. "The chapel is full," he said. "My family is waiting. The press is waiting. Our future is waiting." He paused. "And you chose him." Iris's fingers curled once in the lace of her dress. Outside, the music faltered. Someone had realized the groom was missing. Julian reached into his pocket, removed the velvet ring box, and set it beside the photographs. There will be no wedding. For a moment, the room became so quiet Iris could hear the faint crack in the red wax seal hidden beneath her pillow. She reached for it. Julian's eyes narrowed. From under the white silk, she drew out an ivory envelope, sealed months ago, the lower right corner folded slightly crooked from a hand that had not been as steady as she had pretended. On the front, in her own handwriting, were 10 words. "Open this when you are ready to ask, not accuse." Julian stared at it. Iris stood. Then, very carefully, she removed her veil. Julian did not take the letter. That was the part Iris would remember later, more clearly than the photographs, more clearly than the weight of the veil slipping from her hair. He looked at the ivory envelope as if it were something alive, something small and wounded that might still bite him if he came too close. Behind the closed door, the music outside tried to recover. A violin found the right note. Another followed. The chapel breathed again, uncertainly, like a room pretending it had not heard something break. Iris placed the letter beside the ring box. "You should read it," she said. Julian's mouth tightened. "I asked you one question." "No," she said quietly. "You brought me an answer and called it a question." For the first time since he entered, something moved across his face. Not regret. Not yet. Just the first flash of irritation that came when truth stepped outside the line he had drawn for it. The man who controlled headlines in 7 countries, who could stop a rumor before lunch or make one immortal by midnight, had always hated sentences he could not edit. "I saw you with Adrian Crowe." "Yes. You knew what that name meant to me." "Yes. And you went anyway." Iris lowered her eyes to the loose pearl button at her shoulder. It had been bothering Clara all morning. Clara had wanted to fix it twice, but Iris had said no, not yet. as if some small unfinished thing might keep the day from becoming permanent. Now, nothing about the day was permanent except the damage. I went because I had to. Julian gave a short, humorless breath. There it is. What? The sentence people use when they want betrayal to sound noble. The words landed cleanly. Too cleanly. Julian had never needed volume to wound. He had learned from the Vale family that cruelty dressed in restraint was harder to accuse. Iris looked at him then. In another life, in a softer room, he had once touched the ink stain on her thumb and asked how many secrets the rich had paid her to make beautiful. She had told him too many. He had smiled then, almost sadly, and said he preferred ugly truths. She had believed him. That was the first mistake love had made in her. Outside, someone knocked. Julian? Marceline Vale's voice came through the door, composed and low. The Archbishop is asking whether we should delay. Julian did not look away from Iris. No delay, he said. A pause. Then Marceline asked, Are you certain? The question was for him, but Iris felt the shape of it. Marceline had a way of speaking through doors that made the door feel unnecessary. She had chosen the flowers, the seating chart, the official photographer, the guest list, the color of the bridesmaids' gloves, even the hymn that would play when Iris walked down the aisle. White camellias everywhere. Vale flowers. Morning flowers pretending to be bridal flowers. I'm certain, Julian said. The silence beyond the door changed. It became satisfied. Iris heard Marceline's heels retreat down the corridor. Only then did Julian pick up the ring box. He closed it. The click was small. It sounded final. You'll leave through the West Hall, he said. Theo will arrange a car. There won't be a statement until I decide how much of this becomes public. Iris stared at him. How much of me becomes public, you mean? His eyes sharpened. I am trying to keep this from becoming worse than it already is. No, she said. You're trying to keep it neat. Julian's hand tightened around the ring box. The Julian she loved was hidden somewhere behind the man in front of her. She knew that. She knew the version of him who fell asleep in his office with one hand still on an open contract. The version who drank black tea because sugar made things dishonest, though he never explained what he meant by that. The version who had once stood in her apartment above Wynn & Co. Books while rain tapped against the old windows, listening to her type a letter of apology for a senator who did not deserve forgiveness. He had asked her that night, Do you ever write what you actually think? She had said, Not when I'm being paid. And when you aren't? She had looked at him over the machine, her finger resting on the broken tea key. Then I usually say nothing. He had remembered that. Or she had thought he had. Now he stood before her, asking why she had said nothing, as if silence had not been the first language he ever learned from her. The door opened again before either of them spoke. Not Marceline this time. Theo March stood in the hallway, pale behind his wire-framed glasses, a pencil tucked behind one ear, though he was wearing a formal morning suit. Theo always looked as if he had accidentally walked into power and was taking notes in case he needed to escape it later. His eyes moved from Julian to Iris, then to the photographs on the table. He understood too quickly. Sir, he said very carefully, the guests are starting to ask questions. Julian slipped the ring box into his pocket. Tell them the wedding is postponed. Theo swallowed. For how long? Julian's answer came without air. Indefinitely. Iris felt the word pass through the room and take everything with it. The chapel, the dress, the vows she had written herself, because she refused to let anyone else write the only promise she wanted to make with her own hands. Theo looked at her. Not with pity. That would have been unbearable. With alarm. As if he could see something Julian had refused to see. Miss Bellamy, he said softly. Julian turned his head. Theo corrected himself at once. Iris. That almost broke her. Not the photographs. Not the ring box. Not even Julian's eyes. Her name, spoken like she was still a person and not a crisis. She bent, gathered the letter, and held it out to Julian again. Take it. He did not. I'm not interested in a performance. Her hand remained in the air. It was written before there was an audience. Julian looked at the crooked fold at the bottom of the envelope. She knew he saw it. He noticed everything when noticing did not require trust. At last, he took the letter. His fingers did not brush hers. That was mercy, perhaps. Or punishment. Iris stepped behind the dressing screen and unhooked the unfinished shoulder of her dress. The fabric loosened with a whisper. She did not ask either man to leave. There were forms of exposure more intimate than skin, and Julian had already chosen one of them. She pulled on the simple gray coat Clara had hidden behind the screen that morning. Just in case. Clara had not said those words aloud. She had simply placed the coat there, then kissed Iris's cheek and told her not to send any letter while her hands were still shaking. Iris had laughed then, a small, foolish sound. She was not laughing now. When she came back around the screen, Julian was still standing in the same place. Theo had moved to the door, pretending not to watch and failing with kindness. Iris picked up the silver comb from the dressing table. Clara's comb. Not the pearls, not the veil, not the bouquet Marceline had ordered from Paris and approved with a signature. Only the comb. Julian noticed. You're leaving without the car. I came here without one. That was different. Yes, Iris said. I thought I was coming as your wife. The sentence had no accusation in it. That made it worse. Julian looked toward the hall, where the murmur of guests had begun to swell. His family was assembling itself into damage control. Iris could almost feel Marceline arranging expressions, assigning grief, deciding which version of the truth would be most useful before sunset. Vale House had been built on a cliff above Astorbourne Bay, all gray stone and narrow windows, old money pretending it did not need light. Every room carried the smell of polish, salt, and decisions made by people who never cleaned up after them. It was beautiful in the way knives were beautiful when laid out carefully. Iris had never belonged there. That had not frightened her. What frightened her now was realizing Julian might have agreed all along. She walked to the door. Theo stepped aside. Julian did not. For a second they stood close enough that Iris could see the exhaustion beneath his anger. He had not slept. Of course he had not. He only slept when his body betrayed him. Iris, he said. Her name sounded different in his mouth now, like something he wanted to keep but had already dropped. She waited. He looked at the letter in his hand, then at the photographs, then back at her. Tell me one thing, he said. Did you meet Crow because of Alara? The hallway seemed to lean toward them. There it was. Not trust, not apology, but the first crack in the accusation. Iris could have answered. She almost did. The truth rose in her throat with such force it hurt. Yes, for Ilara, for the message your family buried, for the witness Marceline would erase if I said her name, for the sister you still mourn but never truly investigated because grief was easier when someone else gave it a villain. But truth spoken in the wrong corridor could still get a living person killed. So Iris only said, read the letter when you are ready. Julian's face closed again. You're still protecting him. No, she said. She looked toward the chapel doors, toward the flowers, the cameras, the guests waiting for a bride who would not come. I'm protecting what's left of you. Then she walked past him. No one stopped her in the West Hall. Perhaps Marceline had ordered them not to make a scene. Perhaps Theo had warned the staff with his eyes. Perhaps people simply did not know what to do with a bride leaving quietly before she had been publicly abandoned. At the end of the corridor, Clara Wynne was waiting near the service exit in a black coat, holding an umbrella and a paper cup of tea. She did not ask, what happened? She only looked at Iris's dress beneath the gray coat and said, You didn't send it, did you? I left it. Clara nodded once. Good. The rain outside had turned hard. As Iris stepped into it, the chapel bells began to ring by mistake. One clear note, then another. Behind her, Vale House tried to swallow the sound. But the bells kept going. Julian kept the letter. That was the first mistake Marceline noticed. He should have handed it to legal. He should have let Theo catalog it, scan it, seal it in the private evidence system Vale Media used for lawsuits, scandals, blackmail attempts, and all the other forms of intimacy money attracted. He should have treated it like risk. Instead, he carried it back to his office himself. The wedding had collapsed with remarkable efficiency. Vale staff were trained for disasters no one named directly. A fainting guest became a health interruption. A broken engagement became a private family postponement. A bride walking out through the West Hall under hard rain became nothing at all until Marceline decided what it was allowed to become. By noon, the guests were gone. By 1, the official photographers had signed expanded confidentiality agreements. By 2, the chapel had been stripped of flowers. By 3, every white camellia had been removed from Vale House, except the ones in Marceline's private glass house, where no one touched anything without permission. Julian stood at the window of his office, still wearing his wedding suit. Astorbourne Bay moved below the cliffs in bruised gray sheets. The city beyond looked clean from this height. It always did. Distance was the oldest editor. The ivory letter lay on his desk beside the photographs. Open this when you are ready to ask, not accuse. He hated the sentence. Not because it was cruel, because it was accurate enough to make him want to destroy it. Marceline entered without knocking, as she had done all his life. She was still dressed for the wedding. Slate silk, pearls, hair arranged with the severity of someone who believed grief should always be managed before it became visible. "You cannot keep that," she said. Julian did not turn. "I can keep anything in my own office. This is not sentiment, Julian. It is material connected to a breach of trust inside an event, attended by press, board members, donors, and 2 foreign investors. It is a letter. It is a narrative weapon." At that, he looked back. Marceline's gaze rested on the envelope, not with curiosity, but with dislike, almost fear. Very slight, very controlled. Anyone else would have missed it. Julian did not. "Why does it bother you?" "Because women like Iris Bellamy survive by making men feel guilty for noticing what they are." His voice cooled. "Choose your next sentence carefully." Marceline's expression did not change, but one pearl earring trembled when she inhaled. "I am protecting you. From a sealed envelope? From humiliation." Julian looked at the photographs. Iris under rain. Adrian Crowe beside her. The door of the Marrow Hotel behind them. The timestamp glowing in the corner like a verdict. 2:11 RM. He had stared at those numbers until they had become part of his pulse. Theo March stood near the door, holding a leather folder and not looking at anyone for too long. He had already changed out of his formal jacket. There was a smudge of graphite on his cuff. "Sir," Theo said quietly, "I reviewed the preliminary media sweep. Nothing has leaked yet." "Good. There is something else." Marceline turned. Theo looked at Julian first. "The photographs came from a private courier, not from our security team." Julian's jaw tightened. "Whose courier? That is unclear." Marceline gave the kind of sigh people used when surrounded by incompetence they had expected. "This is exactly why the letter needs to be secured. Every object connected to today must be controlled." Julian picked up the ivory envelope. For the first time, he let his thumb move over the crooked fold at the lower right corner. Iris folded every letter that way. Not always crooked. Usually exact, precise, almost tender. The corner folded inward like a secret kneeling. She had once told him it helped the paper remember it had been touched by a human hand. This fold was wrong. Small, uneven, pressed too hard. Her hand had shaken. Julian set the letter down again. "No," he said. Marceline blinked once. "No? No one touches it. Julian, leave." Theo looked at the floor. Marceline did not move at first. Then she smiled with a sadness so practiced it might have convinced him yesterday. "Your father used to do this," she said. "Mistake stubbornness for strength." Julian's eyes lifted to hers. "My father is dead." "Yes," Marceline replied. "And because he made certain mistakes, we spent years cleaning up after him." She left before he could answer. The door closed softly. Theo remained. Julian looked at him. "You have something else." Theo adjusted his glasses. "Possibly nothing. Possibly is why I pay you too much." "Yes, sir." Theo opened the folder. The timestamp on the Marrow photos says 2:11 a.m. The storm report from that district shows the wind moving east between 1:50 and 2:30. Julian waited. In the third photograph, the rain is angled west against the hotel awning. Silence. Theo slid the photograph across the desk. Julian looked at it again. He had seen Iris in the frame 100 times. Iris with her hair wet. Iris turned half away. Iris beside Adrian Crowe. He had not seen the rain. Theo placed a second sheet beside it. Traffic camera at the corner of Marrow and St. Oran places Miss Bellamy, leaving the hotel at 2:43, not 2:11. Julian's hand went still. That camera is public? No. City infrastructure. Harder to access, but not impossible. Who accessed it? I did. For me? Theo paused. No, sir. For her. Julian looked up. The words should have angered him. They did not. Or perhaps the anger had become too tired to stand. Theo's pencil rolled slightly against the edge of the folder. With respect, he said, that photograph was too convenient. Julian's voice was low. You think I wanted it to be true? No. Theo swallowed. I think you wanted it to explain pain you already had. The room sharpened. Julian should have dismissed him. Instead, he looked back at the rain in the photograph, falling the wrong way. Later, he would understand that this was the moment the accusation stopped being solid. It did not disappear. It cracked. That was worse. A clean lie could be punished. A cracked truth asked questions. And Julian Vale had built an empire on questions he asked other people. not himself. He still did not open the letter. At 4 o'clock, he drove himself to Wynn & Co. Books. No security, no driver, no announcement. The shop sat beneath Iris's apartment on a narrow street where old rain collected in the cracks between stones. The sign above the door was hand-painted and peeling at the edges. Inside, the air smelled of paper, damp wool, lavender burned too long, and the dust of things people had once thought important enough to bind. A brass bell rang when Julian entered. Clara Wynne looked up from behind the counter. She was short, sharp-eyed, with silver-threaded black hair tied in a careless knot and ink on the side of her wrist. She held a bone folder in one hand like a small, elegant weapon. The bell was still trembling when she said, "No." Julian stopped. "I haven't asked anything. You walked in wearing that face. Men only wear that face when they believe the world owes them a door. I need to see Iris. She isn't here. Where is she? If she wanted you to know, you would not be asking me." Julian's fingers flexed once at his side. Clara saw it and smiled without warmth. "Careful. This building is old, but it has survived worse men than you. I'm not here to threaten you. No. You're here because you finally noticed the knife had your fingerprints on it." The sentence struck harder because she did not raise her voice. Julian looked toward the staircase at the back of the shop. Clara moved from behind the counter and stood in front of it. He could have walked past her. They both knew that. He did not. "I have her letter," he said. Clara's expression changed, only slightly. A lowering of the eyelids, a tightening near the mouth. "You have one of them." "One?" Clara turned back to the counter, lifted a stack of unbound pages, and set them aside. She left a copy. "For me?" "No." "For whom?" "For the person she was still trying to save when you were busy deciding how much of her should become public." Julian absorbed that. The shop clock ticked above them. Its second hand stuttered at every 12, then forced itself forward. He had the absurd thought that Iris would like that clock. She liked broken things that kept working without asking to be praised. "Clara," he said. "No. You don't know what was in those photographs. I know Iris." "So did I." Clara looked at him for a long moment. "No," she said. "You loved what she let you see. That is not the same thing." There was no defense he could make quickly enough. From upstairs came the faint outline of absence. A chair scraped badly against wood, drawers not fully closed, a life interrupted but not destroyed. Clara followed his glance. "She took one bag," she said. "The gray one with the broken clasp. Not the blue dress you bought her. Not the pearls. Not the shoes your aunt sent with the note about appropriate bridal height." Her mouth tightened. She took her father's fountain pen and 3 blank notebooks. "Did she say where she was going?" Clara's silence answered before her words did. She said, "If you came here, I was to ask you one thing." Julian waited. Clara rested both hands on the counter. "Did you come to find the truth, or to find a version of her that forgives you faster?" For the first time that day, Julian had no sentence ready. Clara studied him and seemed disappointed by the honesty of his silence. Then she stepped aside. "You may go up. 5 minutes. Touch nothing you do not understand." Iris's apartment was smaller than Julian remembered, or perhaps it had only seemed larger when she was in it. The room above the shop held a narrow bed beneath the slanted window, a table crowded with paper, 2 chipped cups, a shelf of dictionaries in 5 languages, and the old black typewriter her father had left her. The tea key sat slightly higher than the others, stubborn and crooked. On the table lay torn drafts. Julian did not touch them at first. He stood in the doorway like a trespasser, who had arrived late enough to understand the word. Rain scratched the window. A cup of tea sat cold beside the typewriter, black, no sugar. He remembered the first time she had placed that exact cup beside him in his office. He had been preparing testimony for a congressional inquiry into media manipulation and had not slept in 30 hours. She had said nothing, only set it down, turned a page, and continued editing a speech he had planned to deliver without meaning a single word of it. When he tasted the tea, he had looked at her. "No sugar? You don't trust sweet things." He had laughed. He had not known then how dangerous it was to be seen by someone who did not ask permission first. Now he stepped toward the table. The first draft read, "I need you to believe me before I can explain." It ended there. The second, "If I tell you everything now, someone else will pay for my honesty." The third had been torn through the middle. The fourth contained only one line. "You once told me ugly truths were kinder than beautiful lies, but you never told me what to do when the truth would get someone killed." Julian sat down. The chair creaked beneath him. In the wastebasket, strips of paper curled around one another like pale, dead leaves. He reached down and lifted one piece. Truweich. The T was missing. He found another. Rus. Another. Ruha. The machine had failed every time she tried to type the word truth. Julian pressed the scrap flat on his knee. Something in his chest moved, not breaking, not yet, but shifting under weight. Downstairs, Clara's voice called, 5 minutes means 5 minutes in shops where rent exists. Julian stood. He did not take the drafts. He took only one thing, the memory of the missing letter in every broken truth. Back at Vale House, night arrived early. Marceline had convened damage control in the blue salon. Julian did not attend. He went instead to Alara's old piano room with Iris's sealed letter in his hand. The room had not been changed since his sister died. That was the family lie anyway. In truth, everything had been changed in ways meant to look like preservation. The curtains were new but copied from the old fabric. The books had been dusted but not moved. The framed photographs had been chosen carefully. Alara smiling at galas. Alara beside Julian at 16. Alara looking fragile enough to fit the story they told after she was gone. No one had framed the photograph where she was laughing, with her head thrown back, barefoot on the marble stairs, holding a bottle of champagne she had stolen from a diplomatic reception. No one liked remembering she had been difficult to arrange. Julian placed Iris's letter on the piano. At last, he broke the seal. The red wax cracked under his thumb. He expected explanation. He expected denial. He expected, perhaps, the clean architecture of a woman, who made her living arranging impossible emotions into sentences that could be survived. Instead, the first line stopped him. If you are reading this, then someone finally taught you to doubt me. Julian closed his eyes. For several seconds, he heard only the house moving around him. Pipes, rain, distant voices, the old throat of wealth clearing itself in the walls. Then he read on. I cannot write my innocence in a way that will make you brave enough to believe it. If you need proof before trust, then this letter can only be a map, not a plea. There is a song Alara wrote 3 nights before she died. Your family calls it unfinished, because unfinished things are easier to bury than interrupted ones. Find the blue-marked score. Do not ask Marceline for it. Do not ask the archive. Look inside the piano bench, beneath the loose lining on the left. If you reach this part while still angry with me, good. Anger moves faster than grief. Let it take you there before someone calmer stops you. Julian lowered the page. His hand was no longer steady. The piano bench stood exactly where it always had. Black lacquer, brass hinges, a small scratch near the right leg from when Alara had thrown a metronome at him at 14. He opened it. Inside were music books, folded cloth, a cracked leather metronome. He ran his fingers along the left lining. Loose. Julian pulled. A thin blue-marked score slid free. For a moment he was 21 again, standing outside his sister's hospital room, while Marceline spoke to doctors in a voice so soft it erased responsibility from every corner it touched. Alara had been 23, too young for the official story to harden around her as quickly as it had. He unfolded the score. The title at the top was written in Alara's hand. Dead Stars Still Burn. Julian almost smiled. Then he saw the marks. Tiny slashes beneath certain notes. Not musical notation. Not corrections. Something else. Iris's letter continued. She used shorthand, not professional. Hers. The kind a girl invents when no one listens unless she hides the sentence inside something prettier. You once told me you could read contracts faster than anyone in the room. Read your sister. Julian sat at the piano bench until the room blurred. He read slowly. The marks formed numbers. Sander et. Chardien sit. A. C. Archive B. Hollow saints tell clean lies. The phrase meant nothing. Then he looked toward the far wall. A row of porcelain saints stood on the mantel, relics from Julian's grandmother, pale figures with gold halos and empty eyes. Alara had hated them. She used to turn them backward whenever Marceline annoyed her. Julian stood and lifted the third saint from the left. It was heavier than the others. Hollow saints tell clean lies. He turned it over. The base was sealed with wax, old and yellowed. Inside was a strip of microfilm and a folded note. Julian did not breathe as he opened it. The note contained only 7 words. If Julian is ready, send him to Crow. Adrian Crow contacted him before dawn. Not by phone, not by email. A courier left a single photograph at the west gate. Alara, alive, sitting on a church step in a coat too large for her, flipping off the camera with one hand and holding sheet music in the other. On the back, in black ink, St. Orens. Come without your people. Bring the letter if you have learned how to read it. Julian went alone. St. Orens had been abandoned after the roof fire 12 years earlier. The church stood near the old docks, its stained glass broken in places, its pews removed, its altar covered with tarps and pigeon dust. Rain came through the roof in patient threads. Adrian Crow sat in the second row on a folding chair, feeding something from a paper bag to a one-eyed gray cat curled beside him. He looked older than the file photos Julian had memorized with hatred, leaner, less villainous, more tired. His beard was rough. His coat had lost a button. He removed the battery from his phone and placed both pieces on the floor before speaking. Val, Crove. The cat opened its one eye and made a low sound. Moth doesn't like rich men, Adrian said. Don't take it personally, he has taste. Julian did not sit. Did Iris meet you 2 nights ago? Yes. Why? To keep a woman alive. Julian's jaw tightened. Name. No. I can protect her. Adrian laughed once, without humor. That sentence has buried more people than guns. Julian stepped closer. Adrian did not move. I spent years thinking you killed my sister. I know. Your family paid good money to help you think that. The words hit the church and came back colder. Adrian reached into his coat and pulled out a small envelope. I loved Alara, he said. Julian went still. Not the way tabloids said. Not the way your aunt needed it to sound. She was a source first, then a friend, then someone I could not save because I underestimated how much your family preferred a dead scandal to a living daughter with proof. Julian's voice turned dangerous. Be careful. No, Adrian said. That is what everyone around you has been for too long. Rain tapped through the broken roof. Adrian held out the envelope. Iris came to me because she found Alara's handwriting in a letter she was paid to restore. She recognized the shorthand because Alara had hidden the same marks in the score you found. Iris did not come because she was betraying you. She came because she was trying to decide whether telling you the truth would free you or destroy the only witness we had left. Who is the witness? Adrian looked toward the cat as if the animal might advise him. No. Julian's control frayed. You expect me to trust you? No. I expect you to hate me intelligently. Adrian tossed the envelope onto a broken pew between them. Inside was a copy of the original Marrow Hotel hallway still. No rain, no hand at Iris's back, no furtive look over her shoulder. In the untouched image, Iris was pushing Adrian away. Behind them, half hidden by the hotel's brass plant stand, stood a man Julian knew, one of Marceline's private security contractors. Julian stared at the image until the church seemed to tilt. Adrian's voice was quieter when he spoke again. She knew someone was following her. She knew the photos would be used. She went anyway. Why? Because the witness would only speak to her. Why Iris? Because Alara wrote to her. Julian looked up. That's impossible. Is it? Alara died before Iris and I met. Adrian's expression shifted, and for the first time there was something like pity in it. She wrote to the girl who made a living, finishing other people's unsent words. Your sister was dramatic. I liked that about her. Julian folded the photograph carefully. Where is Iris? Adrian leaned back. If she wanted me to tell you, I would. Julian almost smiled at the cruelty of that answer. It sounded like Clara. The next person to surprise him was Celeste Hawthorne. She came to Vale House at 6 that evening, wearing dove-gray silk gloves and no expression at all. Julian received her in the front library because refusing would have created a story, and every story in Asterborn had teeth. I assume, Celeste said, removing one glove finger by finger. Your aunt has already suggested our families proceed with the alternate arrangement. Julian looked at her. She has not said it aloud. How considerate. She usually waits until the body is warm. He almost laughed. Celeste placed a slim black folder on the table. I am not here to marry you. Good. Try not to sound so relieved. I have rejected better men under worse lighting. What is this? A list. Julian opened the folder. Names, dates, settlements, private relocations. Young women connected to powerful families, some married off, some paid off, some publicly discredited. Some erased into rehabilitation clinics, foreign schools, advisory roles that never existed. What am I looking at? Women who became inconvenient to family architecture. Julian's eyes lifted. Celeste's face remained calm, but she had removed both gloves now. Her bare hands rested on the table, pale and tense. My mother calls it preserving legacy, she said. Your aunt calls it crisis prevention. I call it a graveyard with better stationery. Why give me this? Because Iris Bellamy is not the first woman Marceline has tried to make smaller than the room she entered. Celeste paused. And because if I do not help her now, I will spend the rest of my life smiling at weddings arranged over other women's ruins. Julian looked at the list again. Were you part of this? I was raised inside it, she said. That is not the same as innocence. For the first time, he understood that Celeste was not a rival to Iris. She was another form of prisoner, better dressed and better trained. She stood to leave. At the door, she stopped. One more thing. Your aunt asked me yesterday whether I would object if certain documents concerning Alara were permanently sealed after the wedding. Julian's grip tightened on the folder. What did you say? Celeste slipped her gloves back on. I said I was raised to smile at funerals and negotiate at weddings. Her eyes met his, but I am getting tired of both. That night, Julian returned to Iris's apartment alone. Clara was closing the shop. She looked at his face, and for once, did not say no. She is not upstairs, she said. I know. Then why are you here? Julian looked toward the ceiling. Because it is the only place where no one is trying to manage what happened. Clara studied him, then unlocked the back door. 10 minutes. And if you steal anything, I will curse your bloodline in 3 languages and 1 dead dialect. He believed her. Upstairs, the room was darker than before. The rain had stopped, leaving the window fogged at the edges. Julian did not turn on the overhead light. He sat at Iris's table beneath the small brass lamp and looked at the typewriter. The broken T key waited. He placed his fingers on the machine. He had signed billion-dollar deals. He had dictated public apologies for governments, denials for criminals, love statements for actors who had forgotten the names of their wives. Words had always been instruments, levers, shields, blades, but Iris had used them differently, as if every sentence should be able to look itself in the mirror. On the table, beneath a dictionary, he found another draft. Not torn. Folded. He opened it. Julienne, if you are angry when you find this, I hope you stay angry long enough to keep moving. If you are sorry, do not bring that to me first. Sorry is too easy when it arrives after proof. Bring me the part of you that chose not to ask. He stopped reading. The room seemed to grow smaller around him. Below, Clara moved through the shop, closing drawers, sliding bolts, giving the building its nightly language. Somewhere in the street, a bicycle bell rang. Ordinary life continued with an indecency that almost offended him. Julian read the rest. I met Adrian because Alara left a letter with a woman who has spent 6 years hiding under another name. She saw what happened. She saw who gave the order. She will speak only if she believes your grief is stronger than your family training. I wanted to tell you. I wrote it 17 times. Every version made someone else easier to kill. If you hate me, but do not let them use your love for Alara to bury her twice. The page ended there. No signature, only the crooked fold. Julian pressed his hand flat over the paper. For the first time since he had walked into the bride's room, he saw Iris not as a woman standing beside Adrian Crowe under rain, but as a woman alone at this table, typing truth with a broken key, tearing it up because every honest sentence had a cost. He had demanded explanation. She had been calculating casualties. In the wastebasket, 1 strip of paper remained caught beneath the rim. Julian pulled it free. It contained 3 words, imperfectly typed. Trust me anyway. The missing T sat between them, like a body. Julian closed his eyes. Downstairs, Clara called up, softer than before. Mr. Vale? He opened them. Yes? If you find her, Clara said, do not ask her to come back first. Julian folded the scrap carefully and placed it beside Iris's draft. What should I ask? For a long moment, Clara did not answer. Then her voice rose through the floorboards. Ask what it cost her to leave. The quiet room had no windows. That was the first thing outsiders noticed. On the rare occasion outsiders were allowed inside. No windows, no clocks, no mirrors, no phones. The walls were covered in gray velvet panels that swallowed sound before it could grow brave. The carpet was thick enough to hide footsteps. The long table in the center had no shine, no reflection, no softness. It had been built for decisions that should never echo. Julian had been 13 the first time Marceline brought him there. His father had been drunk in public again. His mother had cried in the east wing. Alara had thrown a porcelain saint down the main staircase and shouted that the whole family smelled like old lies and expensive soap. Marceline had sat Julian in the chair nearest the door and said, very gently, A Vale survives by learning which truths deserve air. He had believed her. Children believed the adults who sounded calm during disasters. Now, 22 years later, Julian stood at the head of that same table with Iris's letter in his inner pocket and Alara's blue-marked score laid flat before him. Marceline entered last. She saw the room, then the table, then the people seated around it. Theo March, with a pencil and a legal pad. Celeste Hawthorne, gloved hands folded in her lap, her face unreadable. Gerald Voss, the family's senior counsel, looking as if he had been summoned to identify a body. 2 independent board representatives from Vale Media, neither of whom had ever been invited into this room before. Marceline stopped just inside the door. For the first time in Julian's life, she looked almost surprised. "Julian," she said, "what is this?" A conversation without editors. Her eyes moved to Theo. Theo did not look down. That alone told her something had changed. Marceline walked to the chair opposite Julian, but did not sit. "Whatever you think you have discovered, this is not the way to handle it." "No," Julian said. "This is the way you handle things. Quiet room, closed door. Enough people to make it official, not enough to make it honest." A faint tightening crossed her mouth. Celeste removed one glove finger by finger and placed it beside her notebook. The gesture was small. Marceline noticed. "You should not be here," she said to Celeste. Celeste smiled politely. "I have been told that in several rooms. It has lost some of its music." Julian placed the altered photograph on the table. Then the original still from Adrian. Then the traffic camera report. Then the list Celeste had brought him. Then the transcript of Alara's hidden shorthand. No one spoke while he arranged them. Paper had a different sound in the quiet room, sharper, less forgivable. Marceline looked at the evidence, but not for long. She had always understood that looking too closely at a thing gave it permission to become real. "This is reckless," she said. Julian rested both hands on the table. "I asked Adrian Crowe why Iris met him." Marceline's expression remained still. "And you trusted him?" "No." "Good. I hated him intelligently." Theo's pencil paused. Something like a smile touched Celeste's mouth and vanished. Julian slid the original hotel still toward Marceline. "Iris was followed by your security contractor." Marceline glanced at it. "I employ security for this family. You had her photographed. I had a potential threat documented. You had the image altered. I had nothing altered." Theo opened a folder. "The editing chain runs through a consultant retained by the Vale Foundation. Payment authorization came from your office at 11:42 p.m., 2 nights before the wedding." For the first time, Marceline sat down. Not heavily, not dramatically, carefully, as if sitting were a strategic decision. Gerald Voss removed his glasses and cleaned them with a cloth already too clean. "Marceline," he said, "I would advise caution before answering further." She turned to him slowly. "I have kept this family alive for 30 years, Gerald. Do not begin advising me now, as if survival were a legal theory." Julian watched her. There she was. Not the polished aunt, not the grieving guardian, not the woman who chose flowers and donors and statements. The architect beneath. "Alara left a recording," he said. Marceline did not move, but her eyes changed. It was almost nothing, a small darkening, like a candle lowering behind glass. "No," she said. Julian took a small recorder from his pocket and set it on the table. The room seemed to lean away from it. "This was hidden in the base of a porcelain saint," he said. "She knew you would keep the ugly things inside holy objects." Marceline's voice dropped. "Do not play that." Julian looked at her for a long moment. All his life, she had taught him tone was power. Whoever stayed calm controlled the room. Whoever raised their voice had already lost. Whoever asked permission had already surrendered. He pressed play. At first, there was only static. Then a young woman's breath. Alara. Not the memorial version. Not the fragile portrait Marceline had allowed the world to keep. Her voice came through thin and rough and alive, with impatience at the edges. "If this is found after I'm dead, I would like to state for the record that I am not fragile. I am furious. There is a difference, though my family has always found the first word more convenient." Theo's pencil stopped moving. Celeste looked down. Julian did not breathe. Alara continued. "Marceline says the scandal will pass if I sign the correction. The correction is a lie. The foundation moved money through 3 media charities, buried stories about Hawthorne acquisitions, and paid witnesses to recant. Adrian has copies, but they will destroy him first because he is easier to discredit than a Vale. I suppose that is the family motto, really. Find the person with the least protection and make them carry the sin. Marceline closed her eyes. Not in grief, in calculation. The recording hissed. If Julian hears this, I'm sorry. Not because I lied to you, because I let them teach you that silence was loyalty. It isn't. It's just fear with better manners. Something in Julian's face shifted then. No one in the room spoke. Not even Marceline. Alara's voice softened. There is a girl who writes letters for people who cannot say what they mean. Bellamy. I found her through Wynn's shop. If this reaches her someday, tell her not to make my family sound kinder than they were. Tell her unfinished words still count. A small laugh broke through the recording, bitter and bright. And tell Julian the piano was always out of tune. He never noticed because he only played what he was told. The tape clicked. Static. Then nothing. The quiet room held the silence like a mouthful of glass. Julian looked at the recorder. He had spent years grieving a sister edited by other people. A troubled girl, a reckless source, a public embarrassment, a wound the family had survived. But Alara had not been a wound. She had been a witness, and he had let her be buried under adjectives. Marceline opened her eyes. She was unstable, she said. Julian looked at her. The words were so familiar, they should have hurt less. They did not. She was 23. She was endangering thousands of employees, shareholders, partners. She was telling the truth. She was going to destroy the company over moral theater she barely understood. Celeste's voice cut in, soft as silk pulled over a blade. How fortunate the truth always sounds childish to the people profiting from its silence. Marceline turned on her. You think you are different from us because you dislike the room you were raised in? No, Celeste said. I think I am still in it. That is why I know the smell. Gerald cleared his throat. Julian, the legal exposure here is significant. If this recording is authenticated and released without preparation, it will be authenticated. Yes, but if released prematurely, Vale Media could face civil action, regulatory investigation, shareholder revolt. We should have faced them years ago. Marceline stood. There it is, she said. The romance, the guilt. The little ghostwriter has made you sentimental enough to burn down your own house. Julian's hand closed over Iris's letter inside his pocket. He did not take it out. This was not Iris's burden to prove anymore. You used my grief, he said. Marceline's face hardened. I preserved your future. You gave me a villain because the truth pointed too close to home. I gave you a life. No, he said. You gave me a script. The words struck her. For a moment, she looked older. Not weaker, older. As if the room had removed some filter she had spent decades holding in place. You have no idea what happens when a family like ours loses control of its story, she said. Julian looked around the room. At Theo, who had stopped taking notes because some moments refused to become minutes. At Celeste, who sat with one glove off and one glove on, half-armored, half-tired. At Gerald, already calculating collapse. At the gray velvet walls, built to keep truth from traveling. Then, he looked back at Marceline. I am beginning to. He opened his laptop. Gerald rose halfway from his chair. Julian. Theo stood too, but not to stop him. On the screen was the prepared packet, Alara's recording, the original hotel image, the forensic report on the altered photographs, the payment authorization from Marceline's office, a statement to the board, a notice to independent counsel, and a public correction drafted without Iris's face, without her private grief, without turning her into a tragic bride for Vale Media to redeem itself upon. Julian had written one sentence himself. Iris Bellamy did not betray me. I failed to ask for the truth before accepting a lie. His finger hovered over send. Marceline's voice became very quiet. If you do this, the stock opens wounded. The foundation freezes. Hawthorne walks. The board turns. Everything your father built. My father built a company, Julian said. You built a room. She flinched then. Only once. But enough. Julian pressed send. For 3 seconds, nothing happened. No thunder. No collapse. No cinematic justice. The screen simply confirmed delivery. Then the ventilation system clicked off. The room lost its low mechanical hum. And for the first time Julian could remember, he heard rain inside the quiet room. Not inside, exactly. Above. Against the old glass dome hidden beyond the velvet ceiling, a sound so faint it had never been allowed to matter. Rain. Real, uneven, impossible to edit. Theo looked up. Celeste closed her eyes. Gerald sat down very slowly. Marceline remained standing. Her face did not crumble. Women like Marceline did not crumble in rooms they had designed. She only placed both hands on the back of her chair and lowered her head a fraction, as if listening for the first time to a house she no longer fully owned. "You think this makes you clean?" she said. Julian shut the laptop. "No." He touched the edge of Alara's score. "It makes me late." That answer did what accusation had not. It left Marceline with nothing useful to fight. A phone began vibrating outside the room, then another, then several more. The world, excluded so carefully, had started knocking. Theo's device lit up in his hand. "Board members," he said. His voice was different now. Less assistant, more witness. All of them. Gerald's phone rang next. Celeste put her remaining glove back on. "I imagine my mother has just learned I am difficult to arrange." Julian almost smiled, but it did not reach him. Marceline looked toward the door. No one opened it for her. That was the first visible consequence. Small, but complete. All her life, doors had anticipated her. Staff moved, lawyers prepared, family members adjusted, rooms yielded. This one did not. She walked to it herself. At the threshold she turned back. "Your sister wanted to ruin us." Julian looked at the recorder. "No," he said. "She wanted us to stop ruining other people." Marceline's mouth parted slightly. No answer came. She left. The door closed behind her with a softness that would once have sounded controlled. Now it sounded tired. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Theo set down his pencil. "Julian," he said. "Not, sir." Julian noticed. So did Theo. Neither corrected it. "What happens now?" Celeste asked. Julian looked at Iris's letter, still folded inside his pocket, unopened to the world but no longer unanswered. "Now," he said, "I stop making statements about people I have not learned how to hear." Outside, the phones kept ringing. Inside the room built to bury voices, Alara's recording machine sat on the table, small and ugly and alive with silence after speech. Julian picked it up carefully. For a second, he imagined Iris at her typewriter, striking the broken T key again and again, trying to force truth through a machine that would not carry the whole word. He had done the same thing with his life. Built systems that removed the hardest letter. Trust. He looked toward the door Marceline had closed, then toward the rain above. Then he turned to Theo. "Find Iris," he said. Theo's face tightened. Julian heard himself and stopped. No, that was the old language. Find, bring, arrange, control. He closed his eyes once. When he opened them, his voice had changed. "Find out if she is safe," he said. "Do not tell her to come back. Do not tell her I need to see her. Do not put anyone near her she did not ask for." Theo nodded. "And if she asks why?" Julian touched the letter in his pocket. "Tell her I finally asked the wrong person a question and got the right answer." Celeste stood. "That is almost human," she said. Julian looked at her. "Almost?" She picked up her folder. Human would have been asking before the wedding. She left him with that. He deserved it. The room emptied slowly after that, each person carrying away a different piece of the wreckage. Gerald carried legal exposure. Celeste carried proof that her own cage had a crack in it. Theo carried instructions that were, for once, not orders disguised as care. Julian stayed behind. He replayed Alara's recording once more. Not the whole thing, only the last line. Tell Julian the piano was always out of tune. He never noticed because he only played what he was told. He listened until the sentence stopped being an accusation and became a map. Then he gathered every document himself. No assistant, no staff, no one to make the mess look clean before he understood it. When he finally left the quiet room, he did not turn off the lights. For the first time in years, the room remained visible after the decision had been made. By morning, Vale Media was bleeding, not collapsing. Empires did not collapse that quickly. They trembled first. They made calls. They denied panic in rooms full of people paid to recognize it. They used words like stabilization, transition, independent review, temporary suspension, and reputational exposure, because no one in a boardroom wanted to say rot. The stock opened wounded. 3 major sponsors paused campaigns before 9. 2 board members demanded an emergency session. The Hawthorne Alliance withdrew its private endorsement with the chilly elegance of people who had already prepared an exit statement. Marceline Vale was suspended from the foundation pending review, though everyone knew pending meant the family was still measuring how much truth the public could digest without choking on the brand. Julian watched the first reports from his office without sound. On the screen, anchors spoke his sister's name correctly for the first time in years. Ilara Vale was no longer described as troubled. Not unstable. not reckless, not a tragic heiress, destroyed by the wrong people. For the first time, the word witness appeared beside her photograph. Julian turned the screen off. It should have felt like justice. It felt late. Theo entered with a stack of statements waiting for approval. His tie was crooked. He looked as if he had not slept. But there was a strange steadiness in him now, the steadiness of a man who had watched a house crack and realized daylight could enter through damage. The communications team drafted 3 options, Theo said. Julian took the pages. The first made him look decisive. The second made the company look transparent. The third made Iris look fragile enough for the public to forgive on his behalf. He tore all 3 in half. Theo did not hide his relief quickly enough. Tell them again, Julian said. Her name is not a headline. Her pain is not our recovery strategy. Theo wrote that down. With respect, he said. They will ask for a human angle. Julian looked at him. Theo lifted one shoulder. The public likes a redemption arc. Then they can go read fiction. The answer came too fast, too clean. Then Julian heard himself. He closed his eyes. Even now, he wanted control. Of the story. Of the apology. Of the way the world would see the wound after he had finally admitted who held the knife. He opened the drawer of his desk and took out Iris's ivory letter. The seal was broken. The paper had softened from being read too many times in too few hours. Her handwriting remained exact, except where it did not. The word ask carried a small blur of ink. He had touched that blur until he hated his own hands. On the last page, she had written, "If the truth clears my name, do not mistake that for bringing me back. A cleared name is not the same as a safe heart." Julian read the sentence again. Then he stood. "Where are you going?" Theo asked. "To write something no one approves." He drove to Wynn & Co. Books before the shop opened. Clara was already inside, turning on lamps one by one. When she saw him through the glass, she considered leaving him in the rain. He could tell. The thought passed across her face with real pleasure. Then she unlocked the door. "You look terrible," she said. "I deserve worse. That is not a rare condition. I need to borrow Iris's typewriter." Clara stared at him. Then she laughed once, not kindly. "You broke her wedding, and now you want office supplies? I need to write to her. You own a media empire. That is the problem." Clara's expression changed at that. She stepped aside. Upstairs, Iris's apartment still held the quiet of someone absent but not gone. The gray light touched the table, the cold cup, the torn drafts. Julian sat before the typewriter and placed his hands on the keys. For 10 minutes he wrote nothing. It was astonishing how useless power became in front of a blank page. He had dictated statements to governments. He had turned scandals into weather. He had watched men confess without ever using the word guilty. But now there was only paper, and the terrible fact that Iris would know if someone else had arranged his remorse for him. He typed one word. Truth. The T jammed. The page read Ruth. Julian stared at it. Then he almost laughed, but the sound came out broken. "Of course," he said. Downstairs, Clara called. "If you swear at the machine, I'll add it to your bill." He removed the page and tried again. The T failed again. After the 4th attempt, his fingers were stained with old ribbon ink. A black mark spread along his cuff. Yesterday, he would have changed shirts before anyone saw it. Today, he left it there. At last, he took Iris's fountain pen from the table. He did not know if he had the right to use it. He used it anyway, and accepted that even the apology would begin with trespass. "Iris, I did not ask." There were 100 sentences he could have written after that. Explanations, context, grief, Alara, Crow, Marceline, the photographs, the timing, the way old pain had worn your face before I even looked at you. He crossed them all out. "I did not ask. I turned my wound into a courtroom and made you stand in it alone." The pen paused. Rain moved down the window in thin, uneven lines. Somewhere below, Clara was speaking to a customer about book glue, as if the world had not split open and kept going. Julian wrote slowly, "I am not writing to bring you back. I do not have that right. I am writing because you once gave words to people too cowardly to find their own, and I became one of them. You protected Alara when I had made an enemy out of the person still carrying her truth. You protected a witness whose name I still do not know. You protected me, even after I gave you every reason not to. That does not make what I did smaller. It makes it worse." He stopped there for a long time. The old Julian would have offered repair. A house, a car, legal protection, security. a public apology in every paper he owned, a statement large enough to bury the silence before it. But Iris had not asked for size. She had asked for a question. He wrote, "If there is a day when you want to speak, I will listen without preparing my defense. If there is never such a day, I will still tell the truth where I should have told it first. I am sorry I believed proof before I believed you." No, he crossed that out too. It was too easy, too balanced, too concerned with sounding right. He wrote beneath it, "I am sorry I made you prove you were worth trusting." That was closer. Not enough, but closer. He folded the letter himself. The lower right corner came out uneven. He almost tried again, then stopped. Let it be ugly. Let it show the hand. When he came downstairs, Clara looked at the envelope. "You asking me to send that?" "Yes." "Anything in it that tries to drag her back by the heart?" "No." "Anything in it that makes your guilt her responsibility?" Julian hesitated. Clara narrowed her eyes. He opened the envelope again, reread the last paragraph, and removed one line. Clara nodded. "Better." He sealed it without wax. He did not deserve ceremony. 300 miles north, Iris read the public correction in a seaside train station, where the roof leaked over platform 4 and the tea tasted faintly of metal. Her name was cleared. Ilara's was restored. Marceline's power had cracked. Julian had told the truth. Iris folded the newspaper carefully and slid it beneath her cup so the table would stop rocking. She did not smile. She did not cry. A woman sitting across from her glanced at the headline, then at Iris's face, and did not recognize her. For that, Iris was grateful. Her phone remained off in her coat pocket. Clara would know where to send what mattered. Adrian would move the witness again. Julian would survive the fire he had finally stopped feeding. Everything was moving. Only her heart stayed still, not healed, not dead, simply unwilling to be hurried by justice arriving late with clean hands. Outside, a train pulled in. Iris did not board it. Not yet. She touched the empty space on her finger where a ring had never been placed. Then she took out a blank notebook and wrote one sentence at the top of the first page. "Do not write for people who only listen after losing you." She looked at it for a long time. Then, beneath it, she added, "Unless they learn to ask." 3 months later, Iris Bellamy stopped writing letters for people who were afraid of their own voices. She did not announce it. There was no website update, no dramatic farewell to the clients who had once paid her to soften betrayals, polish apologies, and turn cowardice into something that could survive good paper. She simply returned the last deposit, closed the ledger, and taped a handwritten notice to the inside window of Wynn & Co. Books. Free letter class. For people who do not know how to begin, Saturdays, 4 p.m. Bring your own truth. Clara read it twice and said, "That sounds dangerous." Iris stood on a stool, pressing the tape flat with her thumb. "It probably is. Good. The harmless things never change anyone." The first Saturday, 3 people came. An old man who wanted to write to the son he had not spoken to in 11 years. A college girl who needed to tell her mother she was not coming home for the summer. A woman in a green coat who sat through the whole hour holding a blank page and left without writing a word. Iris did not force anyone. That was the first rule. No one had to confess before they were ready. No one had to forgive to be kind. No one had to make pain beautiful for someone else to understand it. She did not say those rules aloud. She wrote them on separate cards and placed them across the table between chipped mugs, cheap pens, and Clara's uneven biscuits. At 4:45, the woman in the green coat finally wrote one sentence. "I am angry that you died before I learned how to hate you properly." She stared at it, horrified. Iris only slid another piece of paper toward her. "Keep going," she said. Outside, Astorborn moved toward winter. The bay went dark earlier. Rain came in sideways some evenings and left salt on the shop windows. Vale Media remained in public review. Marceline's name disappeared from the Foundation website, then from donor dinners, then from the kind of rooms where people pretended absence was not a sentence. Ilara's recording had been authenticated. Adrian Crowe published a restrained, devastating investigation that did not once call itself revenge. Celeste Hawthorne broke her engagement negotiations with 3 sentences and 1 closed door. Theo March sent Iris an email every 2 weeks. They were short, careful, and never asked where she had been. Julian did not email. He wrote. The first letter arrived in early October, forwarded through Clara with no return address on the envelope, though they both knew whose hand had folded it. The lower right corner was uneven. Iris noticed that first. She placed it on her desk and did not open it for 9 days. On the 10th, Clara came upstairs with 2 cups of tea, looked at the sealed envelope, and said, "It's beginning to look smug." Iris almost smiled. "I'm not ready. I didn't say open it. I said it's smug." The letter stayed closed another week. By then, the 2nd had arrived. Then the 3rd. None were long. None came with flowers, lawyers, invitations, cars, security, apologies printed on expensive stationery, or the old machinery of a man who once thought repair meant making the damage impressive enough. One letter said Alara's piano had been tuned, but one note still sounded wrong, and he had decided to leave it that way. One said he had tried to fix her typewriter's T-key and made it worse. One said Theo had resigned twice in the same morning and returned both times because his mother's bakery still needed capital. One said nothing about coming back. That was the reason Iris kept reading. When she finally opened the first letter, she did it on a rainy afternoon after class. The shop was closed. Clara was downstairs arguing with a supplier. The old radiator knocked in the wall like an impatient ghost. Iris broke the plain seal. No red wax. No performance. Only Julian's handwriting, less elegant than she expected, controlled at first and then rougher where the page had resisted him. "Iris, I did not ask." She stopped there. The room blurred a little, but she did not cry. She read the rest standing up. He did not defend himself. That was the first surprise. He did not ask her to come home. That was the second. He did not say he could not live without her. Julian, who had once mistaken possession for protection, did not make his grief her responsibility. He wrote that he had turned his wound into a courtroom. He wrote that she had deserved a question before evidence. He wrote that if she never wanted to answer him, he would still spend the rest of his life asking better questions of everyone else. At the end, there was one line, "May I write again, even if you never reply?" Iris sat down slowly. The class cards lay scattered across the table. Bring your own truth. Do not borrow someone else's ending. A blank page is not failure. She read his letter a second time, then folded the lower right corner. Straight. Winter settled. Julian kept writing. Iris answered none of the first 6 letters. On the 7th, she sent back 1 page. The typewriter key still sticks. That was all. 3 days later, a small padded box arrived at Win & Co. Inside was a replacement typewriter key, carefully wrapped, with a note in Theo's handwriting. He wanted to send a technician. I told him not to be himself. Clara laughed so hard she had to sit down. Iris held the little metal T in her palm for a long time. She did not install it that day, or the next. Some repairs needed to wait until they were no longer trying to prove anything. In December, on the first clear afternoon after 12 days of rain, Julian came to the shop. No car at the curb, no security outside, no dark-suited men pretending not to watch the windows. Only Julian, standing across the street in a charcoal coat, holding a blank notebook. Iris saw him through the glass, while helping the old man from class choose an envelope for his son. Her hand went still. Clara looked up from the counter. "Oh," she said. "The weather has brought in a billionaire." Iris said nothing. Julian did not wave. He did not come in as if the door belonged to him. He waited. That made it worse. And better. After the old man left, Iris unlocked the door. The bell above it trembled when Julian stepped inside. For a moment, neither of them spoke. He looked thinner, not broken. Julian Vale would never offer brokenness as proof of remorse. But something in him had loosened, as if he had stopped holding the world by the throat. "I was nearby," he said. Iris lifted an eyebrow. He exhaled once. "No, I wasn't." A small silence opened between them. Honest, at least. Clara made a sound behind the counter that might have been approval or indigestion. Julian looked at Iris, then at the long table where her students wrote their difficult beginnings. "I brought a notebook," he said. "I see that. I don't know what to put in it. That usually means it's yours." He looked down. When he spoke again, his voice had lost the old command. "May I sit for a while?" Not stay. Not explain. Not start over. Sit. For a while. Iris looked at the chair opposite her. The same chair where strangers brought their grief, their apologies, their unfinished sentences. The chair did not know who deserved it. That was the mercy of chairs. She did not say she forgave him. She did not say she loved him. She did not say the past had closed behind them like a door that could no longer open. She only reached out with her foot and pulled the chair back. Julian looked at it, as if she had handed him something breakable. Then he sat. Between them, on the table, stood the old black typewriter. The replacement T key had been installed that morning. Neither of them mentioned it. For a long time, they listened to Clara downstairs, the rain beginning again against the window, the small living noises of a shop full of paper and second chances that had not yet promised to become anything more. Iris rolled a blank page into the machine. Julian watched her hands. "What are you writing?" he asked. She pressed the first key, then the second, then the third. The word appeared slowly, dark, and complete. Truth. This time, no letter was missing. Iris looked at it, then at him, and for the first time since the wedding that never happened, Julian waited for her answer without trying to survive it before it came.